everyone, this is Alexis, and you're watching the Power to Be Show podcast. If you've been following us for a while, you know our slogan is worship does not stop on Sunday. On the Power to Be Show, we are showing people every week the impact of recognizing how God impacts every aspect of your life. Dive in each week as Dr. Byrd, who is both a pastor and professor, chats with various entrepreneurs and leaders in the community. This week, we have with us Jeanette Gordon, who is the Senior Director for Healthier Neighbors, a place-based, resident-led behavioral health initiative. Their mission is to connect local and natural assets to opportunities and creative strategies to improve behavioral health in the 33401, 33407, and 33404 zip codes. Before I turn it over to our host, all I ask is that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment on the episode, and share with your circle. We all have the power to be. Now, here is your host, Dr. Terrell Byrd. Welcome to another episode of the Power to Be Show.
Be creative, be connected, and be courageous. Worship does not stop on Sunday. Now, if you were going to give advice that you would say, a business owner must do this to succeed. Listeners, I hope that you have been blessed, even as I have, with what we've heard today.
Thank you, Alexis. We are just delighted to have with us Jeanette Gordon today. She is a wonderful person, but more importantly, she's making a difference in her community. And for that, we are grateful. So I just want to say welcome, Jeanette. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here. And I'm excited about the conversation.
Well, good. And that's what it is. It is a conversation. But what is fascinating for me is that it is going to be able to kind of look more at, because you're a very diversified person. You've got a lot of things going on that you've done and a lot of things that you're preparing to do. So we're going to hopefully get into a little bit of all of that. Currently, you are Healthier Neighbors.
Yes, thank you. So currently I serve as the Senior Director for Healthier Neighbors. It's a behavioral health initiative that's funded by Palm Health Foundation.
Okay.
I've been in this position since Healthier Neighbors began. That was about 8 years ago, 2016.
Okay.
And we are one of 6 initiatives throughout Palm Beach County. So you may have heard about Healthier Delray or Healthier Boynton, Healthier Glades.
Okay, well
there's
then
a few of us out here.
And I want to get to that. So
we're all connected. And
good.
So this is the work I've been doing with community. For the past 8 years.
Okay, so that's where you are currently, or at least getting ready, hopefully, to transition, and as you continue to grow and expand on what you're doing. So with that said, what I'd like to know is, and I'd like to let our audience know, is who is Jeanette Gordon? What is your story? There are some things that we are doing now in our current positions that really say a lot about who we are before we got to this position. So tell me something about who you are as a person, where you're from, and a little bit about your background.
Well, first, I am Jeanette Gordon.
Okay.
I am a daughter.
Okay.
I'm a daughter of the Most High. I am a daughter to Beverly Caines and the late Maurice Caines and Richmond Gordon.
Okay.
A little bit about my background. I was born in Jamaica.
Okay.
And my family migrated to the U.S. in New York when I was around 1. So, I'm a yachty. So we lived in New York until I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
My mom and my biological dad divorced in my uncle was in Florida and he was like, come to Florida, it's great.
Okay,
And I was just traumatized because the kids at school were like, there's only kids at Disney World. They're not anywhere else. And I was like, oh no. They was like, it's just old people. And I was like, oh no. But I came here and of course it was very different. And
Sure.
I've been here since 1989.
Okay. So one of the things that I noticed is that your earlier work had to do with children and counseling, counseling youth. And how did what triggered that kind of response to doing something like that, working with kids and counseling?
Well, my background in leadership began in church.
Okay.
So it began with, having to go up on 13th Sabbath and say your memory verses and be present and go into all the activities. And then it transitioned into, do you want to be the secretary for the youth department? Do you want to be the assistant director for the youth department? So it's always been a part of me, working in the church and working with churches and ministries. And I didn't see at the time that it was development. That I was exposed to boards from a very young age.
Yeah.
You know, back then it was like the church board, and now as an adult, I'm like, it's the same board. You know, so my role in working with youth began from I would say high school, probably as a counselor in my Pathfinder group, and then it just matriculated. You know, as responsibilities grew in church. So when I was getting ready to intern at the great Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, my internship opportunities included that of working with children who were grieving. And my mom worked for hospice, so I was very familiar with the hospice culture and that people pass and, you know, it's difficult, but I was not prepared for children grieving and the different types of loss that they experienced. So that was my first kind
of the entree into
taste, you know, into social, getting into the workforce, because social work has always been a part of my life. Always from when I was a kid.
So your discipline was social work.
Yes.
Okay.
I graduated my bachelor's in social work from Florida A&M, and I actually started off in physical therapy, and there was a national shift where it became a master's program and everyone had to start over.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, what am I going to do? Okay. So people are like, you went from physical therapy to social work?
Yeah.
And one day I'm like, well, it's still helping people. It's just a different capacity, you know? So I very much love what I do, and it has evolved.
Okay. So that your interest or passion for young people began kind of through the church and through your work with the church, and then kind of spilled over into your academic life in terms of social work. And so you did that. And then after, because I noticed that you continued with education, you did an MBA, and that seemed to move you in another direction because it's business administration. So talk a little bit about that.
So this MBA degree that I have, my brother, his bachelor's is in business administration, and he graduated from Florida A&M as well, School of Business and Industry. And the whole time he was there, he was like, everyone should have a degree in business. And I was like, wow, whatever. I'm a social worker. I'm never going to be in business. And there was a point where I have these spells in my life where I know it's time for a change. Like something has to be done. Like, I came to a point in my life where I felt like every time I spoke to people, I was having the same conversations. I was like, you really need to elevate yourself. So I started reading more, and I was like, that's not it, right? And I used to be so fascinated by people who had MBAs. I thought they were so smart. And whenever they would tell me, I was like, whoa, you got an MBA. So that's really why I chose it, right? Because I wanted to challenge myself. I didn't even see what God had set up for me, you know, girl. I'm trying to see this connection between the social work
piece, and now the business piece, and how you are able to marry those two in a way that helps to define not only who you are, but what you do. So, yeah.
A lot of business strategy is used in nonprofit, in community work, marketing. Marketing was I did a concentration certification in marketing, and some of those same strategies that I learned is what I use today.
Okay.
Like how to capture people's attention, what's important to them, right? But what's even more important is that I get to capture it and give it to the people, have them respond to it, give me feedback, then I can shift it and then keep moving. So it really is like group participation in this work, but it is a lot of the principles that I learned that help guide this. You know, there's still budgets that have to be spoken. You know, there's still creating spreadsheets and just so many things that are involved that, I will say that going through that process of receiving my MBA was some of the most pleasant learning I've ever experienced. Because I was working at the time, and I started to see how it fit into my work.
Got it.
In social work.
Yeah.
Whereas, my undergrad, I was like, I just want to get out of here and get a job so I can stop being poor.
Well, Jeanette, one of the things that that I often emphasize is the interdisciplinary nature of learning, of how we should be able to integrate various aspects of learning to help shape who we are.
Absolutely.
And also understand better the world around us. So it looks like you have done that in your learning process. Now, as I think about this, social work and also the MBA, I also know that you have been involved with nonprofit and the whole nonprofit world. And also with this entrepreneurial spirit. So, working with nonprofits and then also looking at entrepreneurial. Can you talk a little bit about your desire for nonprofit and service? And because my concern always is, where is God in the midst of what you do, and how do you integrate your faith into the work you do? Because worship does not end on Sunday. So talk to me a little bit about that. I know
I put some index cards in my purse because I just knew you were going to hit me with like 5 or 6 questions and I'm going to have to remember to get to them. But let me just start with this.
Okay.
When I went back to school to get my MBA, I was in a financial rut on paper. I did not look good at all, right?
Okay.
And people were just like, you want to go back to school, but do you know what you did with the loan that we gave you before? And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to do that again. Just give me a shot.
Sure.
So when I got serious about it and I prayed about it, and I said, God, if you let me get this degree, like, I promise I'll use it for you. Like, I got this. Like, So I got in school and everything was cleared and everything was good and, got done and got my degree. And lo and behold, my church needed a church clerk. And the church clerk was transitioning. So, normally that's not a role for someone in their early 20s. But I was like, boom, this is my payback. Like, I'm going to be the church clerk. And then I've done my due diligence of paying you back for this degree, God.
Working in church.
But as I've grown and matured in my faith, I realized how immature that thinking was because everything that I do is a product of God's love for me, and it is that, why do you do this? Sometimes people ask me about volunteer hours and, oh, that doesn't count because that's your job. You get paid for it. But people that do this work, that you don't, when you can stop.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And often that's not where you stop. Because people deserve so much more.
Yeah.
Especially when you see opportunities and resources that are open. And for me, if I were to stop it at 5 o'clock and I knew 50 more people could have benefited, I would just be home thinking
So there's
about
no
that.
boundaries on service, and on serving.
There are.
Okay.
There are, right? So that's a part of the understanding self,
Okay,
right? So
okay.
any folks that come into this field, especially in place-based work, which is what I do, working directly with people in a designated area, right?
Okay.
So anyone that comes in this work, I was like, well, what would you tell people? Know yourself. Do you have a therapist? Because working with people and hearing issues and,
Sure.
there's every negative stat for our community, right? We're low income, we're low education, we're low health, we're low babies, we're low everything, right? Everything that can be negative.
Yeah.
So it's like if that's what you're hearing all day and you have your own issues
So
to deal with.
The counselor
where's
needs
your
counseling.
outlet?
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like understanding your biases, understanding, when they flare up and when they're present and just being aware of self.
Yeah.
Because there are times when, especially working with community, you just got to sit back and be quiet.
Yeah.
And it's not about voicing your opinion. It's about listening.
Okay. Well, I know one of the areas that you seem to kind of dive into was this area of housing and also HIV, AIDS.
Yes.
And so those are heavy issues. Talk a little bit about what are some of the dynamics of helping to solve some of those problems, and what were you doing to do that?
Well, my route, I laughed because when I graduated back then, when you had to fax in applications, right? My mom worked at hospice. I would give her like 15 applications every night. Like, Mom, fax these in for me.
Yeah.
And someone responded, and I really wanted the comprehensive AIDS program to respond. I really, really wanted to work there. And they didn't respond. And someone else responded. So I started that position. And I was in there for 2 days. And I got the call from the comprehensive AIDS program.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I could just leave and they never see me again, or I could do this the right way. And my older brother was like, you really should do it the right way because you don't want to burn bridges. So glad I listened because I went back to partner with them in another job. And because of that good relationship, it was there. So I started working in, at that time, it was comprehensive AIDS program. Now it's Found Care. They've grown leaps and bounds under Miss Yolette, and it was eye-opening for me. Coming back to
which
my
part
community,
was it? Yeah,
the eye-opening was the influx of individuals in community who looked like me, were my age, and were positive. And we did, and I say that because I'm thinking about my coworkers that were around me in the cubicles, and the same communities that I'm working in now. Like, I've always been in these communities, so I would do home visits, downtown West Palm, and go and see my clients. And at that time, there was funding for paying mortgages and rent, but we would just go in and check in and how are you doing and how are your living conditions. And I used to go out to Belglade twice a week to go to the offices out there. And in one of the offices in Belglade, they had a tree on the wall, and the tree was of all the babies who passed of HIV and AIDS.
Wow. Powerful.
And names got added to the tree while I worked there. So it was like that was the community that I returned to, what do we do to get to the bottom of some of this, and how can I be a part of that? What do I have in me to help?
So you were doing that before they got a lot of the medications and
It was still a very heightened time in community. I'm not going to say it's not as heightened anymore, but I do think back there, especially in the elderly community, there was a huge rise in the elderly communities here. And we had to, go out there and we would partner with our I forget what the team was called that would go out and give out information, but we would be there to say, hey, if you need assistance with housing, we can do that. If you need short term, what have you. So I worked on that side and not so much the case management side, but you still got a taste of everything that someone was experiencing, inclusive of the medications they take, and sometimes being on the phone with people that you knew personally, and you just, hey, what can I do to help you through this process? That's it. It's not about, hey, how'd you get in this situation? It's just, but by the grace of God.
There you go. There go
so,
I.
It has always just made me feel like this is something that I always want to be a part of.
Good. Yeah. Well, I could sense even in reading your involvement in that, and that's why I kind of point out the housing and the HIV, because housing, again, is another one of those areas where, especially now, people are suffering so great from the lack of. And then, of course, food insecurity as well. So you got all of these pieces and many of them are interrelated, So the other thing that I really picked up and I thought was very, very interesting about what you have been doing is you have been really working toward this racial equality and equity. And I'm assuming that what you have been doing is engulfing yourself in the world of the marginalized. And talk about a little bit about that, about how race has impacted the challenges that people face and working with people on the margins.
Well, my connection to marginalized communities is not so distant. This is a part of my lived experience growing up and, seeing my mom flip through the books real quick when we're, buying groceries and, standing in line and being like, where are we? Like, what are we here for? And it's like, why is it so noisy? Why is it so crowded? Why are there so many people here? Why when we go to the eye doctor, why do I have to go all the way in the back and look at the 4 little glasses that sit on the counter, but why can't I get the ones that are out front? So it's like, why do I always have to feel different? Because of the position that we're in. So why can't resources be equitable so that as a child, I'm not traumatized because, I have to wear the super big bifocals, which I did, And I used to try to hide them in my book bag, but I could not see, but it's like, and now, what I think one of the greatest challenges is the lack of knowledge of history. And I think that if people, including people who look like me, including Black people, right? And I get it because my family's Caribbean, right? So there's already an issue with we're not really Black, that's already that, right? And like
identity type.
Yes, it's like no, we're Jamaican, we're not African American. We don't understand the struggle of me. But how did you get there?
That's right.
So those are conversations that will always be had. But for me, it's like when you teach and you grow and you move, right? You don't keep that to yourself. And what was most important to me is that in our community that they understood, and Adverse Childhood Experiences teaches this, that it's not about what's wrong with you. It's about what was done to you.
Okay.
So for me, in including community in Racial Equity Institute, which we did, and that was something unique because we had residents from Stony Brook with governmental officials from Palm Beach County sitting in a Racial Equity Institute, a 2-day, I forget now. It's been so long since we've all sat in the room and did that.
But Stony Brook,
having that conversation and everyone realizing how much you have in common, right?
Yeah.
And also residents realizing, wait a minute, redlining? That's how this happened.
Right. Yeah.
So we not just nasty and dirty and don't want better for ourselves. It's that we don't get equivalent resources.
Right.
Like, now I have a reason to go register to vote.
Yeah, and the fact that you can see that because of a lived experience, and I mean, I understand that too. I mean, I had to eat government cheese, you know.
It was good though.
It was good. It was. But understanding that we can identify, and therefore don't see ourselves as the other, but see ourselves as a part of.
Yes, you know, because folks have to see empowerment for themselves, right? You gotta get that. Like, I can't, as much as I can, get up every morning and be like, you're powerful, you're brilliant.
Right.
It's that at some point, like, you have to say that, right?
Yeah.
But where is that gonna come from if I don't see any examples of empowerment and knowledge? And so it's like, this is who we. This is who we are. This is what we own.
Right.
This is what we had access to before it was taken away from us.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that we're able to own it and able to share it, so it becomes a shared story. And so it's not just your story, but it's my story. I know Maya Angelou said that we're all edge walking, and to say that nobody has it all together.
Absolutely not.
No, we're all having some issues. So
and that's so important, because if we move in that spirit of nobody has it together, all together, then we value everyone at the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so there's no. One thing that I hate is when we have community meetings and we're introducing ourselves. And this is something that we stopped at our community meetings. There's you can't give your title. It is your name and your connection to the community.
Wow.
Right?
I love it.
Because if I say, hi, I'm Jeanette, I'm the CEO, and then the next person would say, hey, I'm Jeanette, I'm just a resident. And it's like, you are the most valuable person
all these
here.
Class distinctions and status
so
and
it's
things.
Like, let's make this an even playing field. And that way everyone's needs, everyone's opinions are valued, and those that may have felt beneath someone doesn't even know who they're sitting beside, because it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. Oh, Jeanette,
until it's time for a resource, then it matters.
Jeanette, I'm so happy just to talk to you about some of those things. But now, this the current work that you're doing, and I know I want to talk about an entrepreneurial piece too, but the current work that you've been doing, which is healthier neighbors. Yeah. So I want to kind of get into that, and what does that look like? And I want to talk about, even you've been honored because of the work you've done, right? The Robert Wood Johnson.
Palm Beach County.
Palm Beach County.
Yes,
so you've been awarded. So I know you've been doing good work.
Yes,
okay. So
there's a movement here in this county, and I'm so excited to have my name and the opportunity to have learned through this process. So this idea of, and let me tell you what Healthier Neighbors is, right?
Yeah,
because
good.
when this opportunity came across my desk, I had just finished a contract, and I was like, I'm going to go to the beach for a couple of days and figure out what I'm going to do next, right?
Yeah.
And a mentor of mine, Barbara Cheeve, she sent me an email and said,
Barbara, I know her.
Take a look at this opportunity. So I was looking at it, I was like, I don't want to be on anybody else's. I don't want to work as a case manager. Like, I'm ready for something different. And then it was like resident leadership. And I'm like, they always say residents are going to lead, and that's never what it is, right? So I kind of put it to the side. And she was like, did you apply? And I'm like, okay. So I think I need to listen. So I applied. And I really didn't take it that seriously.
Okay.
I didn't, right? And I'm glad I didn't, because I think they just got me, right? In that application, I didn't try to fluff anything up.
Okay.
It was just like, let me just apply. Here's who I am. And what shifted for me was walking into that interview, and there were at least 12 people around the table, and half of them were residents, and they were interviewing me. The residents
were interviewing you. Okay.
And then I learned that the residents were the ones that developed the job description. Because in the job description, it said they preferred someone who lived in the community. So Healthier Neighbors prioritizes all of Riviera Beach and Northern West Palm, 07 and 01. So they wanted the individual applying to live within one of those 3 zip codes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're a part of it. Yeah. And at the time I lived in Riviera Beach, I had for 8 years. So I was like, what? Nobody ever gives you bonus points for living in the hood. Like, I live here. So, that probably, made it look a little bit better. I'm not sure. But when I saw on there that element that they wanted the individual to live in community, that it was resident leadership. And then when I got to the interview, there were residents at the table. I sat up. And I was like, okay, whoa, time to take this seriously, right? And that's pretty much how it began. And what I learned about the initiative was that Palm Health was really doing something that no one had done. And this was shifting their funding practices to the typical write in for a grant, and they give opportunities out to, you know what, based on the data we received on these 6 communities and the heightened areas of behavioral health, family caregiving, diabetes prevention, which is what it started off as, let's give the money to community and let them decide what they do with it.
I love that.
Right?
I love it. And they're naming for themselves what they need and what they want. Wow. Yeah.
So the first 6 months of my position was talking to community, introducing Healthier Neighbors to them, right? Wow. And some places I went in, they were like, who are you? Are you from the city? Who sent you? Are you running for office? I was like, no, ma'am. So I was like, I'm just here to tell you about the program. So I went to schools and, folks are like, so we got money? We can do whatever we want to do with it. And I said, yes. So every time I went in, I'm like, hi, my name's Jeanette Gordon. I work for you. And they're like, you work for us? I work for you. And I said, so until you all tell me what we're going to do with the money, what's important to you, the money won't be spent. Yeah. And they didn't believe that. Wow. Right. So it was like when we got to, finally formalizing subcommittees that were chaired by residents. And the residents, what was so huge was they defined behavioral health. Okay. It wasn't taken out of a dictionary.
Gotcha.
And they defined behavioral health based on their mind, body, and spirit being well. Those were their words.
So what their life was like. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And then they said within behavioral health, in our communities, and there's so much similarity between downtown West Palm and Riviera Beach. There's a lot of resources that we utilize, especially on the 45th Street corridor, as it relates to health services, education, all of that border. So the residents wanted to prioritize engaging faith-based organizations with community, right? Wow. So what went off in my head? Then I was like, ooh, you trying to bring it back. I'm still repaying you for this degree, okay? So, but I never thought I would be in a position, number one, where a foundation would say, we will support and give dollars to a community who wants to prioritize faith-based initiatives.
Yeah, look at God. Yeah,
that never happens.
Yeah. And that gets to the core of what I think we need to be thinking about as we live out our faith life. That we're not just talking about what you do on Sunday. There are needs, there are concerns that we need to be addressing. Now, you're talking about having funds. Now, what are the funding agencies? Is it part of what the city is setting aside, or all foundations?
This is all Palm Health Foundation. Okay. Yes. Okay. And this was a big shift, as I said, in the way that they do funding. So what they started to say, right, because now they have these 6 communities that they've invested in. So now it's if Jane Doe, went to them as Jane Doe probably did in the past and said, I'm in Riviera Beach. I'd like to do this project. And they would say, hey, you need to connect with Jeanette. She's in Riviera Beach. The residents there decide how the funds are used. Present your ideas to the residents. Okay. That's the way that it's run. Wow. So from that, it matriculated into us developing a mini grant process, which is probably what Healthier Neighbors is most popular for, is giving out our mini grants. Okay. And that was orchestrated by residents. It started with Healthier Jupiter. They gave small grants to nonprofits in Jupiter. When it got to Healthier Neighbors, right? Because we share so much information in this initiative, which is why it's just so dope, right?
Wow.
And if someone builds a system like my friend Carrie did, coworker Carrie did at the time, Carrie Brown, she built out the mini grant system in Jupiter. When I came on board, she was like, here's all the documents. Just put your logo on it.
Why reinvent the wheel, you know?
Thank you. But you know, sometimes you get in places and folks are like, well, this is mine.
This is mine.
But we share so many resources, but we also share those same resources with communities. So if someone says to me, can I get the blueprint of how you do mini grants? Absolutely. Here it is. This is how we do it.
Wow.
So when she passed that down, then our community said, well, we want to add to that for-profit. Because for-profits do initiatives as well that have to come out of their pocket. So why can't for-profits get dollars for doing projects? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'm telling you, like, as they're telling me these things, I'm like, if this is what y'all want, you do understand you could do it, right? Like, I'm just the facilitator of this. So that has always been the beautiful part of this work is I tell people, it's not about my great ideas. I don't even have to give them, you know. I just listen to what they say and we move and try to find resources that complement. So we started moving with that. And lastly, they said, can we give dollars to people who want to start a business?
Wow. Okay.
This one get by, you know, like that's kind of pushing it.
There you go.
So,
ring,
you know,
ring.
In full transparency, there was some conversation just around trust, right?
Sure.
Because folks were asking, so we're just going to give these people the money? Right. And I'm saying these people, that's my derogatory term I'm using. No one said that,
right,
you know,
right,
so there's
right.
like, we're just going to give community money directly.
Right.
And not monitor, like, how do we know they're going to use it? How do we?
And that could be anybody, these people.
So I said, you know, well, we gotta trust them, right? And there was more to gain than to lose. So the first time that we did mini grants, we awarded 38 individuals from community, and it was a total of about $53,000.
Wow.
And that was inclusive of for-profits, nonprofits, and individuals who wanted to start their own business. So, for instance, a lady applied to us for, I think, like $650 or $700, right? Because grants could be as small as that. And she had been unfortunately laid off from her cleaning business, and she said, I just need to buy the supplies. I have the clients.
Wow. So
she got that. She got her supplies and
went on about her business.
She was out. You know, and I'm just that's the seed that some people need to start their business.
And I often say people are not necessarily looking for a handout, just a hand up, you know? And
so even with them, they're like, we don't got to pay this back.
Right.
Like, no, you're good. Like, I promise you, you're good.
Right. That's wonderful. So now, and this is happening throughout South Florida or Palm Beach County? Or
it's happening throughout, well, not South Florida, Palm Beach County. I will say, though, that there has been interest in other counties in this place-based work.
Okay.
And myself, as well as the other 5 directors and some staff from Palm Health Foundation have been a part of those conversations, just being very transparent in what this looks like financially.
Sure.
Because also on these projects, I speak, you know, when I speak about Healthier Neighbors, I say we, and it's a collaborative because I don't do this by myself. Right, you know, as I said, there's many residents behind this work, right? However, on paper, there's only one full-time employee. So at the end of the day, it's like, my job is to ensure collaboration, is to ensure partnership, you know? But initially, you know, I was just like, this is a little weird. But they intentionally set it up that way so that community can see the majority of the dollars are going to you. It's not top heavy with staff. I don't have a secretary and a case manager and this person and that person. Like, it's just me.
Wow.
Yeah.
But then again, the buck stops too. Then, accountability.
Accountability. And I'm also accountable to my steering committee, which is inclusive of residents. And they do my annual report, the residents, my co-chairs. Shout out to Anitra Moss and Denise Williams, who are currently my co-chairs, and they, I have to report back to them. So if I'm not doing it right, they're the ones that are going to let me know.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I tell you, what you're doing speaks to what this emphasis on faith and integration of faith and work, and how God is using you to do His work and His kingdom building. It's worship doesn't stop on Sunday.
Oh, no. So worship is, for me, continual. It's as I used to say in my Pathfinder group, if we said our pledge was, it's keeping a song in your heart.
That's right.
And understanding that this world is never going to give to us what we deserve, right? So if we're looking for it, you're never going to get it here. This world is crap, and it is. It really is, right? So what are we trying to do right now?
Welcome to the real world.
We're trying to make the best of it. We're trying to love on the folks that just aren't taking the world too well. It's just a little, because the world is a little bit more of a struggle for some people than others.
That's true.
Some folks can just mosey on through and they got it and they're good and nothing's phasing them, and others are like, this killing, this shooting, this wars, this is too much for me, And it's our responsibility to love on those people and to nurture those people and to make them always feel like they're a part of the process.
And when you have a community of support, and that's so important. And I know that's exactly what you're doing. Now, these awards that I mentioned that you were given, so which means somebody's taking note and notice of what you're doing. And that's a good thing. So I applaud you for that.
It is definitely
your team.
A team. And I would say that, between Palm Health Foundation and Youth Services, and I know I am missing one other organization that is a part of it. That all collaborated
and it's
to
a
write,
collaboration. It's the partnership that we have to develop,
and really to show, because it's really a hands-on, right? So it's really to show other communities that residents can lead, and they can lead very well, right?
Yeah.
So we never say that we're going in there to help community.
Right.
They're good. They just don't have access to what they should have access to. So can you just give us
you're helping
what we
to
need?
Provide resources.
Yes,
so
right.
They can do
but
it.
Then also looking at it from a cultural perspective, because resources are going to differ where you go based on your development, what your exposure is, and what have you. So in one area you may need rice, in another area you may need gloves, and not understand why. But it's not for us to understand. It's for us to fill that gap, right? So I think that.
So there has to be a lot of cultural sensitivity in this work.
And just acknowledgement of it. And I'm really excited that there are so many individuals throughout Palm Beach County who have had an opportunity to experience some type of racial equity course or conversation. Even and now there's a racial equity team that meets and that name just slipped me. Everything's slipping me. That meets regularly for individuals who have gone through those courses and want to talk about it and want to do something about it as well. What can we do, right? So first I would say is the education piece, just about where we are and what we're doing and what can be done differently. And I think once that connection is made with community, right? Because it's one thing to tell somebody, right, you struggling, you don't know how you're going to eat today, all these things, right? Oh, and can you go out and vote for what? For what, right? But I think that with our communities, like, we've really got to get down to see that right there.
We have that's how those connections. We've got to say this is why this is important.
And when folks are distracted, it's not that they don't want it.
Right.
It's just that something else has their attention.
That's right.
Right.
And
and it's hard for poverty to supersede anything else.
When
you can't eat.
That's right. When I'm hungry, you don't say, I got a sermon for you. No, I want to eat. So part of what I'm trying to also kind of get at is this Faith Alliance. And I know that you've also been working with clergy and So tell me something about this entrepreneurial aspect of what you're doing and the direction you're going in now. This kind of this next shift, this next journey that you're on.
So this next journey that I'm on, right? So Healthier Neighbors, due to the pandemic and just fate, really, like this is the direction it was supposed to go in, right? This was supposed to happen. So Healthier Neighbors was initially a 5 to 7 year initiative, right? And it has grown on the hearts of community.
Wow.
The impact that it's given, the community assets that just keep unfolding every time we do mini grants. I learn about more people in the community who are doing something. I'm just like, do we have anybody else? And it's just to see branches of, like, we had an opportunity to fund Smoothie Me Please, and now she's branched off to another business where she's renting bicycles, and I'm just like, you just see it going, but it's the dollars circulating in community, right?
Keeping it
right there, right? So I've just been, so excited about that, and with it being a 5 to 7 year, we've always been talking about, what does sunsetting, what does sustainability look like? And that's the conversations that we're having right now, because I am sunsetting in this position, and I am transitioning to something that I've been looking forward to for some time, and looking forward to in a very timid way, but I am moving forward on just being bold about what it is that I want to do next.
Stepping out in faith. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. But what's even greater is that because God knows I am who I am, sometimes he reveals just a little bit more to me for me to get over the hump. Like, girl, look, this is what it is. And I'm like, oh, okay then. Like, oh, come on, right. So we have a very special relationship, God and I. And I think that for me, it's number one, understanding that relationship. Because growing up, God was presented to me very different. It was more in a scare factor, and it was like, you don't do these things, you're going to hell. And it was like, what?
Instead of falling in love with God.
Like, whoa.
Right.
It's like, you can't talk like that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't say that.
The God of wrath. Yeah.
Let me tell you, but God gets it from me plain, raw, I talk to him probably worse than I talk to my friends because, that's who he is, right? So it's like, you already know.
The intimacy that you have with him.
He already knows it's in my head. So like, this is what's going on, right? Yeah. But he always finds a way to introduce me to things in a way that reminds me that I asked for it.
Okay.
And also reminds me that I still need him, right? Because if I felt like, I got this, I'm good, God, go to somebody else, right? I'm like, no, like I actually need you to get a little bit closer because, this new venture, fortunately, right, there is such a dynamic opportunity when your passion and your purpose just align with your work, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, work is hard. Don't get me wrong. Like the work I do is tough. It really is tough. And it's what I love to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So now is a lot of this tied to maybe some program development that you're doing in this new venture?
Yep. So this new venture looks like, and to be quite honest with you, right? So in this work that I do, there's a lot of conversation that happens with community. And I sometimes get very defensive about conversations that are had with our community that aren't handled with care. Because questions are asked and, conversations are had, and then it's like, okay, thanks so much for giving us all that information.
Gotcha.
Have some pizza for you and the kids on the way out. Take some home if you want it, right?
Got it.
And I just want to see that done differently.
Sure.
Right?
Got it.
So there's times when, I may get hey, Jeanette, can you let these folks know who it is that they need to meet with? And I'm like, well, what do they want to ask? Can I get a copy of the survey? Because when you build that trust with community and you say, hey, I'm sending over Brian to come talk to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, Brian can come in my house. He can come sit in my living room because Jeanette said he was good, right?
Yeah.
So when I go in and say, here, go meet with this group, right? So now I would like to be that face of taking care of community and getting that data. But also what I've realized is two things, right? One is the work that a lot of faith leaders want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They're ready. They're willing. They have great ideas. I can't tell you how many pastors and clergy and ministers I've met with great ideas. Right. And church bodies. Right.
Sure.
And they just can't get it out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Like they literally don't know the next step.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just that churches aren't what they used to be.
Right.
Folks are transient, you know, and I remember that the church I grew up in, Ephesus SDA on Palm Beach Lakes, we drove in. I mean, we lived in Westgate, but it wasn't walking distance. So whatever happened in that community, well, other than the fact that I went to the church school. So that's why I knew what was going on in the community. Yeah. But if I was just a regular church member, I'd be driving in and out. And then most people aren't connected with community. So now pastors are saying, how can we do these initiatives? And I'm telling them, there's so much you can do and you don't even have to pay for it.
Yeah. So you are actually, your entrepreneurial work is that you become a facilitator to help these people who desire to move in these different directions to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you know what's even greater than that is not even able to help them move, but helping them to identify who they are in this world, right? Okay. Because there's a great language barrier right now, and I commend organizations like Children's Services Council, Palm Beach County, who have been making like an intentional effort to shift the way that language is prepared for their requests for proposals, known as an RFP, right? Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? So I could tell you that outside there's $1 million with your name on it, but if it's written in French, you walk past that thing and go home like, man, I sure wish I had $1 million, right? So that's really something that I want to work on. And today, actually, I had a meeting earlier with someone, and they were telling me what they did, and I pulled up a local funder, and I said, everything you just said is that's me. I do. You do that.
So you're not only a facilitator, you're also an interpreter, a translator.
A translator
of what people need to do.
Because as we begin, as I began, right, to uncover community assets for me, because these folks been here. They've been here doing these great things in community. It's me that's being introduced to them, right? And now it's like, but you don't have to deplete yourself so much. Come on, let's prepare this so that you can get some money for this. Get some money for this work that you're doing, because a lot of work in our community is just like, well, you know, that's Miss Sarah. She feed the kids at the school, you know, and she goes to the park every weekend. And I said, but that's behavioral health. You know, you can. That's food insecurity. That's health education. Like, we can write something for that, and you can get funding to do this. But we just always think this is what we do. We take care of community, right?
Give me the top maybe 3 or 4 lessons you've learned on this journey. The top that you say, I learned this on this.
Yeah. I wish I had prepared for this. This is probably going to be a lesson. So the top lesson, I go back to understanding myself. Right? Because I remember before I got serious about getting a therapist, like I called my best friend and I was like, I can't do this, Charlie. It's too much. You got to hear people's problems all the time. Like, I'm tired. And she said, Jenny, we go through this every time. Like, come on, like, get it together. And I said, okay, I need an outlet. Because that is a breakdown. So there needs to be an outlet so there's no breakdown, right?
Okay.
So then I found my outlet to get these things off my chest. And then I began to see like, okay. So that was a lesson learned. It was like, don't take all this in and not have an outlet for it, because this work is hard.
Okay.
Right? Secondly is don't be afraid to start over.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to start over.
Okay.
It is kind of feeling like where I am right now, right? I'm getting ready to start again, like something new, right? I also made a major shift in my personal life when I divorced and I moved, and I'm like, ooh, it's just me. Okay, here we go. And I remember like the first time I went to a party, and I went by myself, and I said, well, I'm an Uber, because then I can go, and then I can walk outside, and I can just leave real quick, and nobody will see me walk into my car. I won't have to talk to anybody. And, it was just like, I just thought that everyone saw me as a failure. And I was like, oh, everyone probably just thinks that, oh, she's a failure. And now I'm just like, it's okay.
It's okay.
I started over. Like I did
so
that.
Don't be afraid to make that change, that go to that different place. Okay. That change. Yeah.
And the top lesson for me probably is that learning is continual. It's continual.
Okay.
And it is it's even the reason why, I do my Bible study on repeat, because the next time I come back to that, it's like, I didn't get that lesson the first time. Like, whoa, this is different because I'm a different stage in my life. Or when I realized that you regurgitating the same conversations, you hanging out with the same people, like it's time to step it up a little bit. Like you need to go back to school. You need to read some more books, so it's like that learning process, even stepping out here on my own now, I'm like, where are my learning tools? Because when you're attached to an employer, it's like, you got to go to this training. You got to go to that training. You got to do this training. But now it's like, you got to figure out what's going to be good for you. What's the learning that's going to enhance you in this space?
So be willing to have an outlet. Also be
AKA therapy, because I just want to say that out loud.
Yeah. To be willing to make a change and to move to something different. And then the third one you said is most important is what?
Continual learning.
Continue learning, because learning should never quit. It should never stop. So, wow, it's been a treat. It's that talking to you. Is it okay if I have a word of prayer with you?
Absolutely.
I want to pray for as you move forward. So
let's do it.
Okay, let's pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for the wonderful experience that we've had in this space today. I thank you for Jeanette. I thank you for how you have used her in such an amazing way to make a difference in the lives of so many. And she even acknowledges that it's not her alone and that she's aware of that. So I thank you for her spirit of humility and for her spirit of community and believing that it does take a community. Thank you, O God, for the work that you have done. But now, Lord, I'm praying for the work you shall do, that as she has moved to this new place, this new space, in her journey, that you, O God, would bestow her with bountiful blessings, and that you would extend the borders, O God, the borders for more and more blessings, for more and more resources to be a blessing to others. And Lord, even as you pour into her so that she can pour into others, that you will be glorified for it. So we thank you, dear Lord, and I pray and to give thanks for her today for being on our show. In Jesus' name we give thanks. Amen. Jeanette, thank you.
I wasn't even nervous. That was really good.
Well, that's good. Thank you. And we want our audience to know that this kind of informative and inspirational conversation is something we want you to be able to take advantage of. So we thank Jeanette, and we just pray that you too will be blessed by it. God bless you. See you next week.
We would like to thank this episode's sponsor, Living Word Christian Community, located at 2390 South Military Trail, West Palm Beach, Florida, 33415, where Dr. Terrell Byrd is the lead pastor. The worship service begins at 10:30 a.m. in person on Facebook and Instagram Live.